Welcome to Stars of Stadia, the show where I interview a well-known Google Stadia content creator while we attempt to play a leisurely game of their choice. Think of it as David Letterman for gamers. Carrying on from the previous show, my guest on Stars of Stadia today is my very good friend and erstwhile co-host on numerous shows, Clive Illenden, aka Lord Kensal. Because Clive has a fascinating backstory, this pre-recorded interview spanned almost 3 hours and has been split into 2 episodes. This is the second of those 2 shows. You can find the first on my channel and linked in the description below.
Yeah, so I kind of had aspirations of being, as a few of us, of being a film director or something, or even producing, or just being involved in film, somehow. And in our last year at university, 3 or 4 of us met this film director guy who wanted to make a little pilot. He'd made a film called Eat the Peach. Sounds like a porn movie, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not. It's about those motorbike daredevils that go round and round.
Yes. Yeah, like fairgrounds.
Like a round tube thing, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a play about that sort of, and it was paid for. It was like a sort of BFI British low-key film. Anyway, he directed this, and then he wanted to do this other film, so he came to the university and spoke to the head lecturer and said, look, have you got 3 or 4 guys that can come along and help me? They're interested in learning. I just need some run. So we left university and we set up our own little company. Although we weren't really sure what we'd actually be doing.
Yeah.
But we just set up this company, and then we went to see this business advisor, sort of local business enterprise scheme, and he was this sort of old bloke who'd obviously been in business for many years, and us 3 guys, scruffy guys, come in, and he's saying, well, what do you want to do? And we're not sure, but we want to maybe start a film company. Something like that.
Yeah, carry on film.
Well, yeah. Or maybe we'll start off making corporate videos. Yeah. So that could be a start. We'll make corporate videos for companies. But yeah, maybe not that good. But videos for businesses.
Yeah.
So he said, well, you need a business plan. And we were like, what? And he said, yeah, you need to put together a business plan. What it is you want to do, how you're going to make your money, profit and loss, all of that. Put it together. Here's some leaflets and information on how you might want to do that. If you're serious, come back in 2 weeks with your business plan. So he said to us later he didn't ever expect to see us again for where we were, Berkshire at the time, because we were in Reading. And so that was for all new young entrepreneurs, all sorts of businesses, different types, everything. And we won. We won a little bit of funding from it, and we set up our company to set up, start making videos. But we couldn't get any leads. It was really difficult, and also it was time like the early 90s. And there was one of the many cyclical recessions that we were in, and so budgets, especially fluffy budgets like that, were being cut back. Can't write that off in tax. People weren't that bothered, writing things off of tax and all that kind of stuff. So it was a real struggle. But what we used to do, we had our office. We had an office as well. We hired one of those sort of office spaces with the reception and everything, and we used to sit around talking about film, and we used to say, I wonder if you could watch that film on video. And we were talking about old classics,
right,
or cult films, cult movies, the sort of things we studied at university. And we were going, I wonder if you can get that on video. I wonder who owns the rights to that. I wonder if you can get that on video. And slowly but surely we were realised, this is before the internet really, that's all it was. We were beginning to realise that there's an opportunity here, because there's all these films that we studied at university, cult, not just arty-farty foreign films, but cult films as well. Some stuff that you used to see on the sort of the cult film season on late night on TV and stuff like that, that you can't get on DVD, not even DVD,
VHS.
on VHS.
Yeah.
So we started ringing up the British Film Institute and say, who owns the rights in this film? Who owns the rights in this film? Who owns the rights in this Jean-Luc Godard film? Who owns the right in this film? Francois Truffaut film. Who owns the rights in this old cult classic? Alex Cox film or whatever.
Yeah.
All this sort of stuff. And eventually, the guy at the BFI, he got fed up, and we kept ringing him. Honestly, we kept ringing him. Who owns the rights to this film? And he said, look. He said, what are you guys trying to do?
Yeah.
And we sort of said, I don't know, but maybe we could start, we're just thinking there's a market to start a video distribution company, and acquire the rights to these films.
Yeah.
And have start selling them, in the shops and stuff like that, start a distribution company that specializes in cult and foreign films sort of thing. So he said, look, he says it's no good starting with one film. You can't start a video distribution company, or a label, a video label, with one film. You need a catalogue, and you need to build that catalogue up. As you make your money, you need to invest it in new films, and keep adding to the catalogue and stuff like that. We were like, 2023, no idea. And he said, look, if you're serious, we have no idea how much rights cost. How much films do they cost? $1 million?
Yeah.
Do they cost 10,000, 50,000? No idea. But we were going, okay, because if you're serious, he says, come to London, come to the British Film Institute, come and see me, because I might have something for you if you're serious. So I said to my mates, okay, let's go. So we got our old baggy suits and stuff, put them on, and we went up to the BFI, which is sort of a cult spaghetti western. It's not like a Clint Eastwood one, but it's the sort of the next biggest one that hasn't got Clint Eastwood in terms of spaghetti westerns. Anyway,
okay, yeah.
And it'd been on BBC Two on a section on TV. They used to think called Movie Drome.
Yeah, I remember.
It used to be hosted by Alex Cox, who was a director in himself, and he used to introduce cult and classic films. And I remember what I'd seen, a bullet for the General. It had Klaus Kinski in it.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, Klaus Kinski was in it and stuff like that, because it was a European film and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing it, and I remember when the guy went out to get a cup of tea or coffee, I kind of nudged my mate in the office and I went, look. That's a bullet for the General. That was on telly. Remember we watched that on telly. Anyway, so the guy said, look, he says, it just so happens I've been approached by an Italian film distributor. I've got the rights to a set of spaghetti westerns.
Wow. And
my eyes kind of lit up. Now, bearing in mind, we still don't know how much these cost.
Yes.
1,510,000. I went, yeah, okay. Would you be interested? And my mates were going, well, we don't know how much it costs. And I was like saying, what? No, shh. Yeah. We could be. What would they be? And he went, well, the first lot. One of them is a bullet for the General. I thought, that's it. There it is.
Wow.
And he said, so I can start you off with 5, and then, if it's successful, then and you make some money from those, you can invest them in rights for further films, and you can start building out your thingy. So, and then it was that kind of, well, how much might that be?
Yeah, where are
I said to my mates before, I said, look, because they were saying, we don't know how much it's going to cost or anything. I said to them, look, whatever happens, right, whatever number he says, don't react. Yeah, I have no idea how much these things are going to cost, but whatever you do, I said, Just go, yeah, interesting. Okay, let's consider that sort of thing. That's how we're going to do it. Okay, because otherwise we're just going to look like naive schoolboys, sort of thing. So we went in. We probably look like that anyway. We went in, and then he said, it was like, okay, so it's 10 grand for the first 5. So an advance of 2K a movie, which, like, and I just thought that's kind of, we didn't have 10 grand.
Sure.
But I just thought it's doable. That's doable. And then we basically have to recoup, 2 grand before we're in profit on each movie from the distribution. And you're going to make, after costs and stuff, maybe 4 or 5 quid a copy or something like that, maybe 3 or 4 quid a copy. So I'm thinking, okay, so that's what, you're like a 1,000 copies or something like that. If we can get like 1,000 copies, we're 700 to 1,000 copies. We can sell that, then we're into profit, sort of thing, from that point on. That's the golden number. So we decided with my mates, let's do it. And my mate said, well, my parents will give us 5 grand if we can find the other 5 grand, they said. And I went, okay. So between us, we ruffled up the 10 grand, and we rang the guy at the BFI, and we entered into an agreement, and we started a film distribution company and released spaghetti westerns.
And we produced, these were VHS cassettes, and you were selling them sell-through, presumably sell-through. I mean, at video stores or supermarkets, or So we had to then go to a distributor who had the relationship with the stores and stuff like that. So we were a label, So we were like a record label, And then you need a distributor to distribute the videos. So you need somebody to do the deals. WH Smith, the supermarkets, the Walmarts or whatever it is, and all the video shop outlets and stuff like that. So we entered into a deal. With 20th Century Fox, I think, their video distribution arm. And about 2 weeks before we were about to launch, or about a month, they had cutbacks and they pulled out. And we were like, damn. And now I'm ever the optimist, because my mates are like panicking and everything. I would go, no, come on, we can sort this out. We can find another one. But we're launching in a month or so. I said, I know, but we're just going to focus the mind then, isn't it? Come on, let's do this. And we sort of just rang round, and then we ended up going with Rough Trade. We're famous here in this country, Rough Trade Records. The biggest sort of indie record distributor, so they distributed all the big indie bands at the time, the college rock, as I suppose the Americans would know it, so the indie bands and all that kind of stuff. But they also had distributed videos and stuff like that, and they had a relationship with WH, with the video stores nationally and all that kind of stuff. And so we met them we rang around a few, we met them, and within a week we'd done a deal with them, so it was all back on. And we released our first sort of 4 or 5 videos. Wow.
And we were responsible for we had to do the design, the marketing, all of that, come up with the PR, everything. And like we'd never, none of us had been in business before, none of us had worked. Well, I'd worked at the bank, but that's really giving people money, not over the till, not marketing, business, anything like that, PR. None of us had an idea, so we totally made it up as we went along. But that in a way gave us an advantage, because we could do kind of guerrilla marketing in a weird way, and try and find ways to do things that other labels didn't. We contacted a lot of cult magazines and stuff like that, and they were really excited, and we were excited. We were passionate about the films, so we talked passionately about it, and so it got the cult film magazines passionate about it. We also approached, we used to say, why don't we approach Philip French from The Observer and The Guardian? He was a famous film critic, and we discovered that he'd written a review of the of spaghetti westerns in the 70s, and then he'd revisited it in the 80s, saying he thought they needed revisiting, but there was more going on here than some sort of cheap, junky, B movies. There's an interesting stuff going on, and some of the writers of these things went on, like Dario Argento, who went on to create, European horror movies and stuff like that. He wrote spaghetti westerns. He cut his teeth as a screenplay writer, and things like that. So for spaghetti westerns first, because that was the film industry in Italy in the 60s. So and we knew all this, so we weren't just some kind of boring film distribution company. We were passionate about film. We'd studied it. So we wrote to him, we wrote a letter to him and said, oh, you said you didn't like spaghetti westerns when you went in the 70s and they needed revisiting. We're starting a spaghetti western label, but from the point of view not aimed specifically at guys who love westerns, but for people to reappreciate spaghetti westerns. And he loved it, and he did a whole half page broadsheet article on us, just because of that, because we contacted him and spoke passionately about it, and there was a couple other sort of famous film critic writers that we also contacted, and they gave us blurb. In fact, we contacted Alex Cox, who presented the film show that I talked about, and said, will you write the inside label blurb? So we had a double-sided label for our video, so it wasn't a cheap label, it was like a blush label, and you opened it up, and inside the box there was an introduction to each film.
Wow.
Written by Alex Cox. So it was just like things like that we sort of.
So it was like a connoisseur's brand.
Yeah.
And in essence, that was a reflection. Yeah, and it was a reflection of your own passion for that particular genre. Yeah. So was it ultimately successful, Clive? Or?
Not really. No, we sort of broke even. Okay. But we didn't. But like in any business, I always describe it's about the gravity needed to take off. You need a lot of rocket fuel to take off. But once you've taken off, you've taken off, and it's like the profit. So for instance, in this case, once you've burnt through 900 copies of you sold 900 copies, we were kind of in profit. Yeah, and they hovered around an average of between 700 and 1200.
Right.
So they never really got us enough in profit that we could go, right, let's buy another 5 films. We did buy some. We got enough to sort of say, okay, we'll buy another 2 films. One of which was Django, not the Quentin Tarantino Django.
Yes.
But of course, the Quentin Tarantino Django is based on the original Django. We couldn't get the original Django, but we could. There were loads of sequels, but they were just like any after the success of Django.
Yeah.
In the cinema in the 60s, starring Franco Nero, an actor called Franco Nero. Every other spaghetti western, they just called it Django Gets Out of Bed, Django Rides a Bike, Django, but none of them starred him.
Right.
And then in the 80s, he made Django Rides Again. So this is way past when spaghetti westerns were gone.
Yeah.
We're done.
Totally out.
But some Italian film company had persuaded him, or European film company persuaded him to revive the role of Django. So this other company had the rights to Django, which was quite a big spaghetti western, but we managed to get the rights to the sequel from the 80s with Franco Nero, the only sequel that had Franco Nero in it. Although Franco Nero is in the Quentin Tarantino version as a sort of a homage to him.
Oh, is he?
He meets him in the bar. And
I was going to say, it must be the bar, because there weren't too many scenes with other people.
No, yeah, and he says, he turns to, your main character, and he says, "What's your name?" And he goes, "Django." So it's a little kind of, it's Franco Nero asking him, what's his name is, and he says Django. So it's quite a sort of funny.
Brilliant. That's a classic Tarantino moment.
But there's a little Easter egg So I was like all over that when I was at the cinema watching that. And like,
I had the rights to that movie.
I'm super clever.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
I studied film. Yeah.
So what happened?
It was funny
next?
because
So
the company that had the original film,
yeah,
the releasing it coincidentally happened to be releasing it at the same time. We approached them and we said, "Look, we've got the sequel. Could we do something together?"
right.
And they were a bit, much more of an established video label than we were, because we were brand new. And we were saying, "Man, look, wouldn't it make sense if we did something together, it's marketing or PR?" And they went, "Nah." We went, "Oh, right, charming." All right, and then they paid for Franco Nero to come over to London to do like a press junket. Yeah. So we rang them up again and we said, "You got Franco Nero to come over to do a press junket to talk about an idea." So I rang them up again, but this time I said, "Yeah, hi there. I'm a freelance journalist, film critic, journalist, and I write I tend to get stuff published in sort of local and county papers and stuff like that. I understand that you're releasing a new, the DVD of Django, first time it's ever been available on a DVD, and you've got Franco Nero. Any chance I could come along and interview him? Yeah. I expect this to be in the Oxford Times or whatever."
Yeah.
Blah blah, and they went, "Yeah, no, sure, yeah, we can fit you in, tomorrow, lunchtime. Are you available to come and do an interview? He's got a slot then." And I went, "Yeah, I think I could probably do that." And I rang up the Oxford newspaper as well, and I said, "Would you be interested in an article on such and such?" And they went, "Yeah." So I thought, okay, well, actually, so now I'm not lying.
No, it's official.
It's official. And so then there was 3 of us in the company, and we all wanted to meet Franco Nero. And we thought, well, how can we all go? I said, "Okay, we'll borrow a camera, and you can be the photographer." And then and my other mate did, "What might I be?" I said, "Oh, you just be the bloody assistant or something."
Yeah. Oh,
So my mate took his camera. I took a notepad and a tape recorder and stuff, and my mate sort of carried some stuff with him, and then we went and we met Franco Nero.
Wow.
And the great thing is we knew, because we knew all the other films he'd been in as well, especially spaghetti westerns. He wasn't just Django he was in, and he was like a super famous during the time. It was like as famous as Clint Eastwood was outside of the US. That's how big he was at the time. He was, outside the US, he was as big as late 60s or early 70s, right? That's all that most journalists knew about him. And he's in Die Hard 2, which was roughly out about the same time. But that's all that people knew of him, really. When I say journalists knew about him.
Yeah.
But me and my mates knew like all these films he'd been in, Italian films, spaghetti westerns. So they said, "Right, you've got about half an hour." Right? So we went in and started talking to him, and so we started asking him about all these other films, and his eyes just lit up, and he loved talking about it. And the half hour went by, and then his assistant sort of comes in and said, "Right, sorry guys, you have to wrap it up now. We've got other people waiting." And he kind of he beckoned to her and sort of said,
"Yeah,
no, look, give these guys another half hour because we haven't finished." So we had like all this time with him, just because we were so passionate about and knowledgeable about the stuff he'd done, and he really appreciated it, and so we went away and we had photos taken with him and all that, like what would be selfies now. We had our selfies done with him, and then I went back and I wrote up an article, and I sent it to. Bear in mind, this is all to promote our film.
Yes.
But at the same time, we'd met Franco Nero. At the same time, I managed to write an article and get it published in a couple of local newspapers and stuff like that to help promote the film. Yeah, it was great, and it was all about thinking on your feet,
Yes. Did it promote the films?
Yeah, it did. I mean, it helped. It
Yeah,
it was one of the better selling ones, And so this other company bought it. Like, this is a little while later, I think. Something like that. They bought it off them, and then they came to us and said, we want to do a double pack. We'll buy this thing off you. And by that time, we were like, we were sort of struggling a bit because we weren't making as much money as we thought we would.
Sure.
We weren't really getting paid. We weren't really not enough to pay ourselves. We were postgrad students, so we didn't need much. We lived on a £1 bag of chips or whatever, but like it's hardly healthy. And so it was a struggle. And so this company offered us some money. And we kind of thought we can pay off my mate's parents and be done. But as it turned out, that company ripped us off in the end. We were naive and didn't really sort out the contracts properly and stuff like that, and gave them the masters before we'd been fully paid. And there's really naive mistakes that you do. It seems obvious now, but
no, we've all been there. Absolutely.
So we only ended up getting like half the money or something like that, and then they avoided all our calls and all that rubbish.
You must irk when you see it pop up on the TV from time to time.
Yeah. But yeah, so then it was like my mate, we were sort of saying what we're going to do. One of us, we fell out, one of our partners, so he went and did, he said I'm quitting, so we said okay, that's fine. So it was just like broke up the band. It was just the two of us.
Yeah.
And then my other mate, was my best mate at the time, said, I want to go back to university and do a master's in film studies. Would you mind? And I said, we'd sort of started moving to be a bit more of a mail catalogue kind of a video catalogue company then. So. And then buy them. So it was a combination of our label, our own label, and other ones, and it was all around cult. And we made a sort of like magazine catalogue thing with film quotes and little interviews and stuff. But it basically was a glorified mail order catalogue for DVDs.
And I guess the sad thing is if the internet had been big then,
it was
that would have been absolutely perfect.
Yeah, made for like one of the first if we'd done it. It was before all that. Now I always always regret, it didn't. Plus the power of the internet. And imagine now if I was doing it, we'd have YouTube videos, podcasts about it. We get people excited, and if you want to buy this film, you can. We'd have watch-alongs. So imagine it would just be like completely different. So my mate said, do you mind if I said no, that's fine, I can run the mail order catalogue business, not that difficult. It's like running an Amazon business. You just order when the orders come in, you put the order in, and then you just stick them in envelopes with the invoices, that sort of thing. It's not difficult. It's not what we wanted to do, but it's not difficult. And then I saw there was a 3-month job at the BBC. So I had a friend who worked at the BBC and used to bring back the BBC sort of internal staff magazine, and in the back of it, it's got all the jobs, which is godsend really if you want to get in the BBC. Right. So I saw in there like a 3-month attachment thing. So I said to my mate, look, I tell you what, if you go off back to university, I might try my hand at working in a real job, proper job, because I've never done it before. It's only 3 months. So and it was a job in rights. I thought, well, I know a little bit about that. I've run my own rights, distribution company. Yeah. So I'll apply, like a little rights assistant or something like that. So that's what I did, and it ended up being 5 years. So the second time round, I've been there 16, 17 years.
Right, that's what I thought. You paused, and I thought, hang on, you've been there longer than 5 years. I thought we'd skip forward. So
no. So that was his first tour of duty.
And where does the legal side come in, Clive? Is that on the job training that you've picked up, or?
So my first job was in rights, and then I was just a rights assistant. So it was just really what we call clearing the rights, just making sure we've got the rights if we want to sell the program. I was working for the commercial side of BBC at the time initially.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure all the rights are cleared or paid for if you want to sell it around the world, to sell a TV program around the world and stuff like that. So it was quite an admin based job. But then after that, once you're in the BBC, the opportunity to apply for other jobs and move up and stuff like that, especially when you're young, it is there. It's massive, and suddenly it opens up your eyes to so many different opportunities and stuff like that. So obviously you want to progress. So and my next job I got as it was called a contracts manager, but basically I negotiated the fees for the talent. So I negotiate with agents. So I work with the programming, and they'd ring me up and they'd say, "We'd like David Attenborough, please, to do the voiceover on this Wildlife at One program, whatever, please. Can you negotiate the fee? We'd like to pay him X amount of money, or how much do you think we should pay him?"
Yeah.
And I'd learn how much, because we've got records and stuff. I'd say, well, this is roughly how much we think we should be paying him. And they said, yeah, that's it. And then the production company, it was internal production, would go, yeah, that's fine, that's in the budget. Can you negotiate?
Seriously?
Yeah, that was really good. Most people you deal with have an agent, obviously, talent, and you're, hey, how much? Are you joking? He's worth much more than that. You've got to double it if you want him to get out of bed. That kind of real.
I guess with David Attenborough, he's always been at the BBC, so I suppose
it was fairly a doddle, really. Back in the day. It's like, what job is it? Okay, well, my normal price is this. Is that okay? Yeah, fine. But I remember the first time I rang him, it was like, oh my God, I'm ringing Sir David Attenborough. Oh my God, what am I going to say? Because he didn't have an agent. And then this woman answered the phone. She goes, hello? I went, is Sir David Attenborough there, please? Who is it? It's Clive from the BBC. From the BBC. Yes. I'll just get him. He's at the bottom of the garden.
he's in
David,
the pond.
David, it's Clive. Yes, it's Clive from the BBC for you.
Brilliant.
And then he'd answer the phone. Hello, Clive. Here I am with Clive.
It's brilliant.
We like to do Wildlife at One. My fee is £300 or whatever for a voiceover, whatever it was, and and then I'd have to issue the contract. So I sort of got into the world of again, I wanted to be a film director, but I was in television, so I was sort of happy.
Yes.
And I kind of realised I had this sort of knack for negotiations. And if you're dealing with agents, it's. I always say to people, it's a really the stereotypes, especially back in the day. Yeah. The stereotype cigar chomping, my talent doesn't get out of bed for less than $1 million, kind of stuff. Do me a favour, it's bloody holiday program, It's like we're sending them on holiday and as well, and paying for the privilege to send back a report, which annoy me on the holiday program. Remember the holiday program?
I do. Yeah.
We're going to send somebody famous who can easily afford this holiday. We're going to pay them to go on this holiday and pay for the holiday, and then let them have you tell them what it's all like. I just think, why don't you send ordinary people on holiday? Not going to send famous people who are rich and got money. It's really annoying me. I used to have a real resentment when I rang them up or their agents up saying, we'd like so-and-so to partake in the holiday program, please. Yeah, we'd love to send them to the Serengeti and pay for it. And pay them a fee for going. Yeah.
He's got to get his 20%.
Jesus. Just annoy me. But that's TV, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But that got me into that, and then I was negotiating budgets, program budgets after that, and then this job came up outside of the BBC at Lego.
Yeah.
And Lego had just started about a year or so. Started making video games, and they were looking to get into television as well. Exploit the Lego IP in television. They hadn't really done it before.
Right.
So Lego Media was the name of the company at the time, who at the time were just, moving into exploiting the Lego IP in video games. They decided they want to expand, and they needed a sort of a contract manager, legal and business affairs manager, to look after the video game side and the TV side. And they were ideally looking for somebody who had TV and film experience. So I thought, well, I've got negotiation experience, plus I know how to negotiate program budgets. I would just bluff it. And so I went to the interview, and then they took me for a second interview. And I come to the BBC where if you work at the BBC, it's sackcloth and ashes.
Right.
Like you can't, because it's public service money. I can't just waste money. I can't, I can't have an expense account. You can't get taken out. You can't pay for expensive lunches. You can get taken out for a nice lunch, but that was very rare. I never left the building. I never got taken out by anybody when I was at the BBC back then. But my second interview for Lego, they took me to the Riverside Cafe, which is where Jamie, what's her name, used to work. There for 2 hours just talking.
Wow.
Max and Miracle. Of course, get me talking about me. But for some reason, they love me, and they gave me the job.
Wow.
And it was that kind of classic fake it till you make it thing, really.
Were you into games at that point, Clive, or was that
not?
No.
I mean, I enjoyed gaming, and
Sure.
I used to play on the old N64 with my mate when I was at the BBC. After when we'd finished work, we'd go down the pub, and when we'd finished down the pub, we'd go back to his place, maybe have a little sweetie, a little bit of a smoke or something, and and then I'd play a Sega Mega Drive or anything like that, or any of those. So I kind of like gaming, but I never really had an opportunity to do it. No. But when I was at Lego, I fell in love with the whole concept, the business, to be honest.
Right.
I love going to see game developers, because I had to negotiate with the game developers how much a game would cost, do a deal with them. So as Lego was a publisher, so like a first party publisher, so we would
IP.
If we had the IP, and then we would go to a developer and say, we want you to create a game using this IP, or maybe give them an idea what, say a racer game or something like that, or maybe just say and then they'd come up with a design spec and stuff like that, and then I'd have to negotiate with them on how much it would cost and do the contract. And the contracts are boilerplate contracts anyway, you just tweak the numbers and stuff like that. Sure, but from that you learn about boilerplate template clauses and things like that, and so suddenly you become and everybody at Lego assumed I was the sort of a legal beagle, they used to call me. The legal beagle. They thought I knew I was legally qualified. I mean, Lego had its legal department back in Denmark, and I used to liaise with them, but I was more a business affairs manager, which is like a hybrid. You do the contracts, and if the contract's a template, you can tweak them. You don't need a degree in law.
No, of course.
That's what it is, but you need to understand the contracts. So that's what I did. But then so many people assumed that I was legally qualified, and I didn't like to correct them. It's so awkward if you go, actually, no, I'm not I thought, actually, I should get a legal qualification.
Right.
So I went to my for it, and they said, yeah. So there was caveats to it, but like I had to stay at the company for at least a year or so they paid for it, and I converted my degree. I did a postgraduate diploma in law.
Awesome.
So then at least I could say, I've got a law degree. Didn't make me a qualified solicitor, because that's the next step, but at least it gave me a legal qualification.
Yeah, you could certainly practice law within a company in terms of defining contracts and contract law, commercial law. That
you can't practice law, but you can do the law, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm not you need to be a qualified solicitor to practice.
Sure.
I didn't need any practice. I was brilliant. So that's the sort of. thing. So I was really great, and then it was working with producers, game producers, who worked with the developers to make sure the game was coming on that met the design requirements. And Lego weren't mucking about, like any company that like let's use Stadia as an example.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to if you're going to start your first party label or whatever, you're going to employ experienced producers. Yeah, you're going to employ Jade Raymond, Sharon Studstill, yeah, and you being Google, or in this case being Lego, you have a big name and a reputation, albeit maybe not in the games industry in the same way Google didn't, but you're a big enough company and IP to attract, top quality producers.
Yeah.
From at least from big companies. So most of the producers came from EA. So I worked with a lot of guys that worked at EA because it's my job. And we were producing games, having games produced that delivered on all the consoles. So I used to have all the consoles, and I used to play the games. I used to love going to the developers and seeing early builds and all that kind of stuff. I thought it was exciting. It was interesting, seeing those early graphics and seeing stages, early stage development and concepts.
What period are we talking here, Clive, in terms of what decade?
2000, the early noughties.
Right. Okay.
99,
so that's kind of...
It was about 99 to 2004, something like that, yeah. So we were PlayStation 2, Xbox OG, and the Cube.
Good old Cube.
Yeah. I bought the Platinum Edition Cube. Zelda Wind Waker Special.
Really?
So it's hard to say that. Wind Waker. Yeah. So it's platinum coloured, and it had a platinum coloured controller.
Nice.
And I just bought it for Wind Waker. Wind Waker.
Wind Break. So, what happened? What was the sort of result of when you decided to move on from Lego?
Well, Lego has in its 70-year history, it's always made a profit, and I think for some reason that they were getting overstretched, overreaching from their core business, which is making the bricks, making bricks. And they were like, let's set, and rather than license these things out, they were like, let's set up our own clothes company, let's set up a games company, video games company. And so whilst they did all right, they never really, sold in the millions. Again, it's that profit thing. You need to sell a million copies, and then you're sort of in profit. Yeah, and then maybe they would sell anywhere between 600,000 to $1 million. So the cost, and you're paying several £1 million in development. Yeah, and you've got maybe 10. I once calculate how much money I spent, a lot of cash flow. And so if the money's not coming in as quick as expected, you can see a pattern here. You're going to see sort of, if you're not reaching the targets in gaming you thought you might, then the big mothership, it wasn't just the gaming side of it, but the big mothership goes, wait a minute, this isn't working how we want it. We're going to cut back. We're closing our first party studio. Yeah? And we're going to license out the IP and let somebody else handle that cost, and we'll just take 10-20% for the back end, let them do all the work. And my MD, who was an ex-director at EA, he spoke to the Lego senior management, top tier management in Denmark, kind of behind our backs, but he said, look, if you want Lego to be successful as a gaming IP, you've got to loosen up a bit. Yeah, you know, you got this idea of like, oh, you can't have guns, you know,
Right.
it's kid's brand. No, because it's a kid's brand, you know? And he said, look, you know, but you've got the Star Wars IP. They've got blasters in it, you know, and Luke Skywalker blasts people. The Lego, they had the right for the Lego mini characters and all that kind of stuff, but not the video game rights of the Lego mini characters. You can see the salami is fairly thinly chopped here. I'm not talking the rights for Star Wars video games.
Oh, nothing went unwrit, did it?
For Lego Star Wars games, yeah, but they didn't have the rights. So the last thing I did at Lego was do that deal with Lucas and Warner Brothers.
Wow.
Who looked after the rights to get the Lego Star Wars video game rights. And then my ex-boss went off. So they made us all redundant. And my ex-boss went off and set up a company with Traveller's Tales, who used to make all the games for Disney, all the Disney IP games. They were brilliant, actually. They were really good. They're quick, imaginative, clever, and the games were amazing. Like really clever, really good. They didn't look, they were just good. And so he set up a company with them, and basically entered into a license arrangement with Lego to make and produce and distribute Lego video games. You know, video games based on the Lego IP.
So he took a slice of the risk away.
Yeah, he took a slice, but. And then, you know, and he got them to sort of free themselves up a bit about the way they think about it, and they create an amazing. And then, just to give you an example of saying about, say, you have to say like 700 to 1 million copies to sort of break even. That first Lego Star Wars game initially in its first year sold something like 5 to 7 million.
Wow.
So and then on, you know, the rest is history. The rest is history. So he was absolutely right. Lego were absolutely right.
Yeah.
I was made redundant, but it was absolutely the right decision. And as I say, you know, all the other Lego stuff. Even this year, they released the complete saga section, and gamers of all ages were raving about it and moaning, why isn't it that
opportunity for you to be part of that organization?
I don't think he didn't need me. He didn't need me, because any contracts he needed, he could do. He could just get his lawyer to do it.
Yeah.
He didn't need someone full time to do it.
Yeah.
He just needed a creative director, somebody to look after, a producer, to work with the developer, to make sure they're meeting their deadlines, and a small QA team.
Yes.
Very low overheads, and then they could hire in the marketing when they needed it, so they could operate on a small scale. They didn't need a permanent legal and business affairs board or anything like that. So maybe that's why they just, when they needed to do a contract, he could just get his lawyer to do it.
Yeah.
On a contract by contract basis, which is fair enough.
And you didn't think, I've had a taste of the gaming industry. This is definitely the place I want to be.
Yeah, I desperately wanted to get another job in gaming, and I did briefly. But I wanted to work. I made a sort of a personal sort of mission statement myself. I only really want to work for companies that, if you're at a dinner party and people go, "Where do you work?"
Yeah.
I said I work at Harrington and Harrington Accountants.
Yes.
They're going to go, "Oh,
that's nice.
Yeah, what's that? That's nice." If you go, "I work for the BBC," they go, "The BBC?
Oh, do you?"
There you go. I work for Lego. What? Lego, the toy company? You lucky, person, because you've got your redundancy money. You haven't even finished. You've got your redundancy money, and you're going to walk straight into a job. And there's always that anxiety when you get made redundant. It's like, am I going to find a job quick enough? I don't really want to burn through my redundancy money waiting for, and not end up with a job.
Sure.
So there wasn't, and legal and business affairs is quite a tricky one, especially if you're not a qualified solicitor. There are opportunities, but it's quite niche. But I wasn't that successful. But then I did get a job at a small game developer, sort of run by one guy, but like sort of Elon Musk wannabe, runs the company in his own image. You don't do things like he wants it, no corporate sensibility to it. No, it's just like, oh, today I'm decided we're mostly doing this, and it's like, you haven't got a business plan, have you? You've got no strategy, no nothing. Anyway, so I went to work with this company as a sort of business, not like a business affairs manager, but like a business opportunities manager, trying to find the business.
BDM sort of thing.
Yeah, business development manager, that's sort of, yeah. So I went on that basis. Wasn't very good at that because that's like a salesman's, you've got to be really gregarious and go meet people, and
that's a whole other animal.
Cold call and all that. But I plugged my way into it based on I've got all this business experience, and I was on the senior management team for Lego Media and
right.
I developed, I was involved in developing strategies and business plans, and what before we licensed it all off. We looked at doing a massive advanced deal with a massive publisher, EA, Vivendi Universal, who are in French, THQ, and we put together a massive business plan, presentation, and got them, to do massive business presentations to us. So we literally had the directors of EA come and give a presentation to us, and it was worth 30 to 50 million dollars,
right,
to us. Like the company, whoever company did it, they'd give us an advance, and then they'd have the sort of, they would be then responsible for creating. No, we would still create the games, but we would guarantee we would deliver to them X amount of games over the period of the contract, Lego games, and they would distribute them through under the EA label. And so I did that deal.
Nice.
And it was around the $50 million mark.
Wow.
Yeah. We ended up having to, with EA, renegotiate the contract so that they could sort of get out of it a little bit. And then from that, the licensing idea, Lego management decided, okay, we'll go down the Lego, license out the IP, and that was ultimately the successful solution.
So you've been made redundant, and
yes. I worked with this other I worked with this other awful developer. That's some good games. They had Die Hard. They did a Die Hard game, I think, on the original OX, the original Xbox. It's a good little game. And then they did this sort of Lara Croft, but is a sort of spy type character game, which is really good, right. Critically well received. I forget what it was called now. But they were. I hated it. One of the few jobs I hate.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you sick to the stomach. That kind of.
You don't want to go in every day.
I don't want to go in. I guess if it was some sort of anxiety or depression, but at the time I don't think I would have considered it that. But it was just like, it just made me sick, wanting the idea, and it got to the point. And by that time I've got like a little child, and all that kind of stuff. So it's really difficult just to walk away. But it got so bad I just had to. But I just said to my partner at the time, and don't worry, we'll set up I'll set up as a freelance business affairs manager, and you can be she was an HR expert sort of thing. I said we can offer our services as a sort of business affairs and HR, as HR and stuff like that.
You'd always landed on your feet. I mean, there's no instance. There was the short UB40 period, but you wrote a play, and you were only a kid anyway. Yeah. So you sort of.
It's a bit more difficult than when you've got like
you've got family,
family, and maybe a mortgage. I can't remember the mortgage, but So it was tough. It was tough, but we got through it. It's just the biggest thing was the cash flow. And it was because I remember there was. things were really tough, and I was working on this deal with this company, who actually done a deal with Lego when I was there, and they felt a bit shortchanged, and they wanted to go back to Lego and say, we feel the IP that we create for you was not. This was actually a brick IP. But the IP we created for you has made you $1 billion.
Wow!
And we got about 40 grand for it.
Jesus.
But I did that deal with them when I was at Lego.
That's crazy.
So I said, look, I can't really. There's a conflict of interest here, but I can't interact on your part. But I could tell you what you might want to do or how you might want to approach it. So from that point of view, I'm comfortable doing that. But I can't, So I said, and if I do, I want walk the streets. This time I'd walk. I haven't told many people that, but I walk the streets. Of London, I went out for a walk. I lived in London. I went out for a walk, and I just walked and walked and walked. I think I've got a kid. I've got a mortgage. I've got a little bit of money. We burnt through the redundancy money that we may or may not have had. It's like I'm not. We've got the odd contract here and there, but not enough to sustain. It's not sustaining. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And it was literally, I just walked out. I remember walking through the streets of London. It sounds like a song, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it literally, I was just trying to think. Yeah. But then, as it turned out, this deal came through.
Providence.
And it was like, yeah, thank God for that. And then, but also at the same time, I applied for a couple of jobs. And I applied back at the BBC for a job that just basically said, everything to me, I read it, and me, I was translating it was saying, everything you've ever done and all the experience you've ever had, we need somebody with that. I just thought, wow, I've worked at the BBC, I've negotiated television program budgets, I've worked with sort of independent production companies at Lego. I've also worked with developers, which are kind of like independent. I know rights, and this is what they were looking for.
Right.
So I went for it, but it took them about 4 months to come back to me. So I'd sort of given up.
You'd written it off, yeah.
On it, but I did remember going back to the BBC and sitting in the reception at Television Centre, waiting for my interview. The interviews were tough, 2 or 3 interviews.
Were they?
And I remember sitting there and seeing the people come and go, and I just thought, if I get this job, I'm always going to remember this moment of me sitting in this reception, going, I want to work. I want to work back here. I want to work here again. This is where I want to be. If I ever have doubts about my job, if I get the job, always remember this and just say, be grateful, because there'll be other people who wish they worked at the BBC, sort of thing, Yeah. So I didn't hear from anyone for ages, and then eventually they said, we'd like to offer you the job, and I just thought it was like amazeballs.
A huge sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And this is the job that you've been at now for
17 years later.
Yeah.
7 years later, yeah.
And what's the official role
it.
that you have now?
Yeah. So it's no movement, same job. Moved around the genres a bit, but the point is, I'm sort of, I'm an expert in it, in what I do. So it's not difficult.
Go-to guy.
Yeah, and it's not difficult. And then you get to my age, sometimes you just want life not to be too difficult, not necessarily too challenging.
It's a challenge. 600,000
only,
people over the age of 50.
yeah, it's a challenge, but only in a challenge like any job is, but it's not super difficult for me. So that's I'd love to if I changed jobs, it would have to be something very special.
Yeah.
Because it's comfortable.
Yes.
I'm comfortable.
But the thing that you've done on the outside of all of this comfort, which for some people, particularly somebody that has a history of in the rawest sense, I mean this in that sense, entrepreneurialism. You looked for opportunities, you found opportunities, you've had a crack at exploiting them. I mean, that is basically entrepreneurialism. So what you've done, which I think in a funny old way, again, is parallel with myself, is you've sort of said, well, I've got this job, I'm okay, it makes me money and I can do it, but let's have a look at this content creating thing, because that also, in your case, it scratches so many itches, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like when Stadia came round and everybody sort of, you saw, the Bill and the Lloyds and the, Sunnies and Ace and all that kind of stuff, and and they even chased to a certain degree. I remember, like I just think
massive, big names in the day.
That's they're just sitting there talking. And I'm excited, and like many people as well, who started it because they saw what they thought. All the initial Stadia press was like, "Oh, it won't work. It doesn't work. It's rubbish. It doesn't work." And you're sitting there with the controller in your hand, playing, ironically enough, Destiny 2, going, "What are you talking about? None of what I'm reading makes any has any parallel with what I'm doing right now, which is playing Destiny 2 better than it played on my Xbox One." Because it was like 30 frames a second on Xbox One, 1080p 30 frames a second on Xbox One, and you're playing it 1080p 60 frames a second on Stadia, and
it was even 1440 when it first came out.
What it is, they play it high, but they downscale it. So that's how they did it. So that's why it runs so smooth, arguably on Stadia. But and it blew me away. So you read all this press and stuff, and you just think, that's wrong, no. And then you'd read something else and you go, but that's not quite right. And then you suddenly realise. And so there was that frustration. And then you see, people having sort of shows, and I could do that, but then I could, also give me an opportunity to put my experience across, which, as we found out with the Stadia community, is very similar to everybody, lots of people's experience, who were frustrated by all this sort of but you're losing the point there. I don't make excuses. What I'm trying to do is explain perhaps the reason why, to try to rationalize why they might have closed SG&E. Can we, I'm not making, why we're not seeing any AAAs in 2022? Is there a possible rational reason for it, based on my experience, having worked for a company that wanted to be its own games publisher and create games and use its IP and not do it successfully and close down a company, use that experience, have an understanding of contracts, have an understanding of distribution advances, game development costs, use from experience, having done the contracts, having done the deals, use that knowledge to somehow, in the same way that you do, with your entrepreneurial knowledge and running a business and all that kind of stuff, use that experience to apply it to the knowledge that is out there. So, like I said recently, like I said on the Stadia Monday Night Chat this week, I said that we all have the same knowledge. It's like a comprehension reading study. We're all given the same text, but with the right knowledge, you can understand more, you can comprehend more than the average person. So I use that analogy of Jack puts on his warm woolly coat that's red and leaves his front door, and so the first question of comprehension is, what color is his coat? And you go, his coat's whatever color I say it was, red, whatever. What door does he leave by? Oh, he left by the front door. Oh yeah, right. So we all have that information, and people go, what season is it? Well, it didn't say what season it was, but he did put on his warm woolly coat. So is it the winter? So we all have the same knowledge, we all have the same information, but with the right understanding and right knowledge, maybe you can fill in the gaps of that comprehension a bit more. Now it sounds a bit arrogant, but that's the kind of the point I try to make. If you, like you say, if you're an entrepreneur like yourself, if you run a business, you know about marketing, you know about running a business, you know about business models, you know about, cash flow advances, all that kind of stuff, contracts. And then you look at it from a Stadia point of view, you can then perhaps maybe provide some context or background or understanding to some decisions. You might not be right, but there's a high probability you might be. It's like an ex-footballer being asked to talk, commentate on a game, whatever. You might not like what they say or whatever, but you know what? They've been in the business. They understand what goes on behind. They understand footballers' contracts. They understand training regimes. They understand, pressure of being in a football match. So it's that kind of. So you might think, well, who are they? But they're not. It's not Dave down the pub, as I always say. Dave 69 on Reddit, which is my running joke. So it's like I like to think that I can provide maybe some insight, because I've worked in the gaming industry from a business point of view. I wasn't just worked in QA. Not there's nothing wrong with that, but because that provides a different. Like, I don't know enough technical stuff. I know about game engines, but only because of what I was told by my producers. Not my producers, but the producers that I work with.
Yeah.
The business side of paying advances. When people say, they Stadia paid $10 million for what's it? The likelihood is it's an advance against sales. Revenue.
Yes,
but it's a guarantee. But it's a guarantee. It's little things like that. So
and it's understandable, isn't it? I mean,
so that's all it is.
Yeah, and clearly
a passion to want to talk about it, correct wrongs that you might have seen. Factual inaccuracies. As well, like everybody else, like a lot of other content creators, like MM2K, like yourself, or whoever, who just want to kind of, establish some facts. And as I say, but we know no more than anybody else.
No, but we as you say, you're bringing experience.
But maybe some people do a bit more due diligence.
Now, before Stadia, you were content creating, weren't you? You
a little bit, yeah. So I did. I was mad into Sea of Thieves.
Yes.
And Minecraft, a little bit of Minecraft, but yeah. So, and with Xbox, you could stream direct from the Xbox, and then you could choose something called Lightstream.
Yeah.
Which allowed you to add overlays and stuff like that while streaming direct from Xbox. They had a deal with Mixer as well, the Lightstream. So, and obviously Xbox owned Mixer. So I used to stream.
Sadly shut it down.
Yeah. Oh no, they're closing down.
That was a great system.
So it was, and it felt different from Twitch. It felt like you had a chance, and you could be identified. You'd be lost on Twitch. So I used to do that and have overlays, and I used to stream Sea of Thieves. I stream a bit of Minecraft with my son and stuff, but mostly Sea of Thieves.
Was it because
there was a community that built up, the streaming community, and we were friends, and sometimes we would stream together, and it was like fun. So that's the first time I sort of got into that kind of a streaming community type thing.
And was it because there was a button there that said you can stream, and you thought, well, hang on a minute, this could be a way of entertaining
like my kids watch YouTubers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I just thought that looks a cool kind of thing to do. Playing a game, streaming. It's the dream, isn't it? That looked like
cool as
thing to do.
Until you
won Saturday night
live on 5.
Yeah, exactly. When Clive is live, as MM2K would say. Like when they're going to have that show, because that's never going to happen. But the beauty of YouTube, the beauty of user generated content, is anybody can make the program they want to make. And then what with podcasts now as well, which has gone bonkers.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said, what we could do with lots of people talking. I really want to listen to people talking in the car while I drive to work. Nobody said that. That's distinct from radio. But somehow it's one of those things like the Walkman. Nobody said, what I need
Yeah.
A small portable musical device I can take with me. Believe it or not, you can show I'm showing my age, but trust me, nobody wanted that.
No, it's true.
But when it came, it disrupted the market.
Yeah.
And became its own thing. And podcasts are a bit like that. They're more than radio shows. And now there's like, even at the BBC, we're investing a hell of a lot in BBC Sounds, a hell of a lot in commissioning podcasts, not radio programs, podcasts.
Yeah.
Because it's so big. And it's one of the digital futures,
So before we without moving on to what you think is the future for the BBC, what's the future for you, Clive? What are your thoughts? Do you see yourself creating content in the same form that you're doing for years to come, or have you got big ideas, plans that you want to extend forward?
It's just the same. I'm constantly tweaking and evolving.
Yeah.
The show, and I also try to put a reason behind, think why I'm doing, what's the
justify.
So it helps mold it in your head when you're making it, and that's constantly going through a slight tweak as I sort of perfect the show. Like for instance, I've added the news section now.
Yeah.
Rather than me just do it live and keep going to the news. I think it kind of works better because it can all be slicker. It can be slicker, and it also gives me a slight rest.
Yes.
During the live show. So it's slightly, so it just feels tidier. And then out of that, it's made me realise that I can pick a theme, talk about that theme, but also talk with chat. Because people love it, love that bit. They love chatting about this. Yeah, and I just think actually it's cool. And then I was thinking I was retrofitting. I was thinking it's called the Stadia Monday Night Chat, which is why I emphasise it now when I do the show. It's called the Stadia Monday Night Chat, and you are the chat, you are the stars, blah blah
yes.
blah. And it's because it's because that is part of the show. So that kind of made me right. Let's do the news show. But again, I wanted to be different from everybody else in terms of. I'm actually having a news section, which is pre-recorded and slick and has the has the videos and stuff like that. And then it frees me up to wax lyrical about a topic of the week, and then concentrate and respond to chat. And that keeps it simple, gives me a structure to which to hang the show, and it basically allows me to do it every week.
And again,
without
that's
overthinking
now.
it.
That's now, even though it's slightly evolved.
Yeah.
But okay, let me push you forward. 5 years from now, what do you think? How do you see us? Do you still think you'll be at the BBC, or do you think you may have, just?
I get sent stuff to review, and if you're a content creator who's reviewing stuff, it's great to be in that position in your particular subject area, where companies contact you, and I wish it was LG and Samsung sending me TVs and stuff like that, but it's complete nutrition product companies who independently approach me and say, we've got a new flavor of this, we've got a new product, would you like to review it? We're sending it, or we're just sending you some stuff, will you can you review it on your channel please, and stuff like that. So more of that, and so that, because it's a nice little bit of pocket money, running the channel. I mean, it just pays for a few beers and stuff and whatever, and it's just nice to have. So definitely build on that, expand on that, constantly look to improve the quality, and refine it, and just as a content creator, as a hobby, you get into, say, cycling, and before you know it, a few years, you want the best bicycle you can get, you want the best lycra outfit you can get, and all that kind of stuff, and special 12 gear. Oh yeah, I've got this special Japanese design 12 gear thing, and so it's the same with content creation. We start off with a little webcam from Microsoft webcam, and we progress to a full-on SLR
Canon thing,
Canon M50 whatever, and a Rode mic, or a Shure M7 whatever. You sort of constantly trying to improve the quality, and not just the quality of the technical quality, but hopefully the content make it a bit different, try and do something that's, you know, like when I did the award show, I wanted it to be like a TV award show. I didn't want it to be, some guys making who have a YouTube channel awarding, pretending to give out awards, which may sound like the same thing, but it's not. I wanted it to be produce it like a TV show.
Yeah.
With and now, ladies and gentlemen, here's the winners, and that's what the bow tie and everything, and the presentation, and it was bloody hard work, but that's what I wanted it to be like. I didn't want it to be like, and I said, like, I didn't want to be like everybody else. Like I said right at the beginning of this conversation, I just wanted to be slightly different, not too different, but push it in a slightly different way. Ironically enough, I'm thinking, I've been watching a few podcasts, football podcasts, and just general podcasts, and part of me wants to do a podcast, but so actually go back, almost, but actually know that I'm doing a podcast, so that it's just two people talk, a bit like this. Like I'm treating this like a podcast, but literally that's it. No fancy graphics and all. I mean, there'll be graphics, but no, let's call up the picture and have a look at it, and let's talk about that. It literally, this is the subject. Let's talk, but in a professional
agree.
way. Just keep it, but simple.
Yes,
simple,
and that's actually how I started in there. This isn't about me, but audio podcast. I think what they do is, Clive, it's a bit like classical music. It allows you to turn everything off except your ears and your brain. So you actually focus more on what people are saying. If you listen to sort of James O'Brien's interviews, for example, and it's very much about you're not thinking about how they're gurning or she's looking old these days or any of that stuff. You're tuning into the intellect. I agree. I love that format.
And it's a conversation. That's what you're tuning into, a conversation, but you're hopefully with interesting people, and you're learning something from it, and you go, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Exactly. So that's got to be something that you're going to work towards if you're not.
So I've been thinking about it, but it's like, do I do it on my own, or do I do it with someone else? And if it's a podcast, it should be with somebody else. And then it's like, it's just like, how's it going to work? Who should it be? And then you got to think, and then I start thinking about, they've got to have a good camera. They've got to have a good mic.
Or no camera at all, and you purely do it as an audio.
Yeah, if it's a podcast. Yeah, exactly like this, whatever. So you just start sort of going through the options and drawing up a short list and stuff like that, and just think, umming and ahhing and stuff like that. So it may or may not happen, because again, the other thing is time. However much we enjoy it, and however much I try to simplify the process while still hopefully delivering a quality product of some sort, or at least something that people like and appreciate, it's a balance between effort in and enjoyment out.
Yes.
And if you're putting too much effort in, like when I did added sketches and things like that to the show, whilst it was funny,
hard work.
And actually, did it add anything in terms of the audience? Did it add any? I mean, maybe people liked it, maybe they didn't, but I was still getting, whether I did it or not, I still got the same audience.
Yeah.
And it took me, it took me ages.
Massive.
I was write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. It's like I was literally writing the script, perform. I was performing 3 parts and directing myself. So I had to film the parts 3 times. Film it 3 times with playing different characters. Then make check each one I'd filmed it bloody right. Do it again. I forgot my lines. Had to redo the whole thing. Edit it. Cut out the and whilst and all for maybe a 2-minute gag.
Yeah.
And whilst it's funny, it's like really hard work. And it wasn't.
It's the kind of stuff. To be fair,
I could just say something stupid and funny on live, and or do one of my whiny voices.
But when you get to
and the people love it. It's like,
when you get to your 40,000 subscribers, and you can afford to have a couple of postgrads,
you have an editor. Yeah, exactly.
They do all that editing for you.
And then, but then I'd be hands-on. I'd be no, that's not quite right.
Clive, it's been an absolute pleasure.
You got me on my favourite subject.
No, it's nothing wrong with that. 3 hours of anybody's time's got to be worth listening to.
Yes, I'd say sorry for waffling on, but you know, it is.
Listen, you pays your money. That's what you come here for.
You know, you
absolutely. If you didn't want to learn about Clive, you should have gone somewhere else.
It's the perfect storm. Let's do a show with Clive about Clive. Like, exactly. That's just ridiculous.
And then we just put a couple of new batteries in and flick the on switch and off you go. I found out a ton of new stuff. Yeah, there's a load of stuff I already knew, but I found out a ton of new stuff, and that's what the show's all about. So really, really appreciate your time. You certainly are, sir, a true star of Stadia. You're loved by all. And I'm looking forward to this podcast, I must admit. Maybe we can turn the tables and you can interview me. There you go. Episode 30.
Starter. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, my friend, and happy gaming.
Thank you.